They said it was just postnatal weakness, but when Ogechi's maid refused to let her bathe their own child, the village began to whisper. Was it madness, witchcraft, or something far beyond the reach of human understanding? This is the haunting story of the maid who refused to bathe the baby for 3 years. If you love deep African mysteries, powerful emotions, and stories that linger in your heart, hit subscribe, like, and share. It was a quiet morning in the village of Omokwe when Ogechi's sharp cry tore through the compound. The old women rushed in, their wrappers tied tightly, their hands glistening with palm oil. Moments later, the wail of a newborn followed. Soft, uncertain, but alive. After 5 long years of waiting, Ogechi had given birth to a healthy baby boy. Her husband, Obinna, ran around the courtyard shouting, "The heavens have remembered us." His laughter filled the air as he danced barefoot on the red earth, tears glistening in his eyes. They named the child Kamsi, as I have asked God. For days, their home became a gathering place. Women came with yam and soup. Men came with bottles of palm wine. The child was adored, blessed, and sung over. But as the days turned into weeks, Ogechi's glow began to fade. Her body weakened. Her eyes sank deep into their sockets. She would wake with heavy limbs and struggle to hold her own baby. The elders whispered that perhaps it was NWA Abo, the spirit of twins that takes one's strength when the other is unseen. But the doctor from town said it was postnatal weakness. Either way, Ogechi needed help. That was how Makine came into their lives. She arrived quietly one afternoon, carrying only a small raffia bag and a wooden spoon tied to her wrapper. She was a calm woman in her early 30s, her eyes soft yet knowing, like one who had seen much but spoke little. She came from a faraway village called Umuaga, and even the way she walked was gentle, as if her feet didn't want to disturb the ground. From the moment she held Kamsi, the child stopped crying. Instantly, his tiny body relaxed in her arms as if he had found something familiar. "She is a gift," Obinna said proudly that evening. "Look how the child sleeps whenever she carries him." And indeed, Kamsi hardly cried after that. He smiled more, slept longer, and seemed at peace whenever Makine was near. But the peace she brought also came with a quiet strangeness that Ogechi could not name. Each morning, when Ogechi tried to bathe her son, Makine would gently take the bowl from her hand and say, "Please, madam, let me do it. He trusts my hands." At first, Ogechi thought nothing of it. The woman seemed experienced and careful, but weeks passed, then months, and she realized she had never once seen the maid bathe the baby. Whenever she asked, Makine would smile faintly and reply, "The water in this compound is not pure. The spirits will harm him if I use it." Then she would disappear into her small room with a covered bowl of water, locking the door behind her. When she came out, Kamsi would be dressed, smelling faintly of herbs, camwood, and something earthy, something that didn't smell like any soap Ogechi knew. Ogechi tried to convince herself it was just tradition. Perhaps Makine used old methods from her village. But as Kamsi grew, her unease grew with him. The maid never left him alone. When Ogechi suggested she rest for a day, Makine refused. When visitors came to see the baby, she hovered nearby, silent but watchful. Even when she went to the market, she would insist on taking the baby along. "He cries when I'm gone," she would say softly. "I don't want to disturb Madame's rest." At first, it sounded considerate, but soon, Ogechi began to notice the pattern. The woman simply could not be separated from her son. One day, Ogechi decided to insist. "Leave him. He is my child. Go and buy what you need. Emma Keen hesitated, her face calm but her eyes uneasy. Then she smiled faintly and said, "All right, madam." She stepped out quietly, but less than 5 minutes later, Kamsi began to wail. His cry was sharp, piercing, and strange, not the cry of hunger or pain, but something deeper, almost fearful. Ogechi tried to calm him, rocking and singing softly, but he only grew worse. His tiny fingers clenched a wrapper, his eyes darting toward the door as if searching for someone. The moment Emma Kane returned, he stopped crying. Instantly, the silence that followed was heavier than the noise before. From that day, Ogechi's heart began to live in quiet fear. She watched her maid closely, the way she hummed ancient lullabies, the way she sometimes stared at the baby too long, as if memorizing his face. But nothing prepared her for what would happen on Kamsi's third birthday, the night when peace finally left their home. The evening of Kamsi's third birthday began with laughter. Obina had invited the neighbors. Children ran around the courtyard with balloons, and the air was thick with the smell of fried meat and jollof rice. Ogechi smiled for the first time in months. Her son sat on her lap, clapping his tiny hands, his laughter echoing like music. When the sun set, the guests began to leave, and calm returned to the house. Ogechi bathed herself, wrapped her hair, and went to bed beside her husband. The night was cool, the kind of night that made the oil lamp's flame dance gently. But just after midnight, Obina woke to a strange smell. It was faint at first, a mixture of burnt oil and something damp, like old wood soaked in rain. He sat up, frowning. The smell seemed to come from the corridor. He rose quietly and stepped outside. The house was silent except for the rhythmic dripping of water somewhere in the dark. The smell grew stronger as he neared Emma Keen's room. He knocked softly. "Emma Keen, are you awake?" No answer. He tried again. Still nothing. Then he heard it. A low humming. A woman's voice, slow and haunting, singing in a language he didn't recognize. His heart began to pound. He hurried back to wake Ogechi. Together, they approached the maid's door. Obina called out again, louder this time. The humming stopped. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then a whisper, faint, like wind slipping through a crack. "Do not disturb him." Ogechi's blood ran cold. "Disturb who?" she asked, but there was no reply. Obina pushed the door. It was locked. With one strong shove, the wooden latch gave way. The sight before them froze their hearts. Candles flickered on the floor, forming a rough circle. In the center sat Emma Keen, her wrapper tied loosely, her head bowed. In her arms lay Kamsi, his tiny body glistening as though coated in oil. His eyes were closed, and his skin shimmered faintly under the candlelight. Not like sweat, but like something unnatural. Ogechi screamed, "My child!" The maid looked up slowly. Her eyes shone with tears, but her face was strangely peaceful. "You must not touch him yet," she said softly. "He is between worlds tonight." Obina rushed forward and snatched the child from her arms. The baby stirred weakly and whimpered. His skin was cold, colder than stone. "What have you done to my son?" Ogechi cried. Emma Kine lowered her gaze. "I have kept him alive." But the river calls again. The candles flickered violently, and somewhere outside, thunder rumbled. Before Obina could speak, the maid's body went limp. She collapsed beside the candles, whispering one last sentence as her eyes rolled back. "If you wash him, he will die." By dawn, word had spread through Umuokwe that Emma Kene, the strange maid from Umuaga, had fainted while performing dark rituals with Ogechi's son. The village gathered like ants around spilled palm wine. Men whispered. Women crossed themselves. Obina, furious and frightened, ordered that she be taken before the elders. Under the great Udala tree at the village square, the elders sat on carved stools, their faces stern but curious. The oldest among them, Pa Anduka, spoke first. His voice was calm, the voice of a man who had seen many reigns. "Woman," he said, "why have you refused to let the mother of this child bathe her own son? What secret are you keeping?" Amakeen sat on the bare earth, her wrapper dusty, her eyes heavy, with something between sorrow and peace. She looked up slowly, her voice trembling but steady. "Because he is not just a child," she said softly. "He carries the mark of Mmiri, the goddess of the deep waters. If ordinary water touches him, she will reclaim him." A murmur swept through the crowd. Some hissed, some gasped. Others made the sign of protection with their fingers. Pa Nduka frowned. "You speak of gods, yet you came as a servant. Why should we believe you?" The maid looked down at her hands, then back up at them. "Because when he was born," she said slowly, "he did not cry for the first 5 minutes." A wave of silence rolled through the crowd. Ogechi's eyes widened, her lips parted. That detail, that terrifying moment of stillness at birth, was something only she, her husband, and the midwife knew. Not even the neighbors had heard of it. Amakeen's voice grew softer, but every word seemed to echo through the air. "He was silent because the river world tried to claim him back. They called his name that morning, but he hesitated. His soul stood at the edge of two worlds, the water and the earth. He almost returned to them. But I was passing through this village that night, and in my dream, the goddess appeared to me. She looked around, her eyes glistening. She said to me, 'A child has been born that belongs to us. But if you wish to keep him among men, you must guard him from our waters. Wash him only in the mist of dawn and herbs of the riverbank. If ordinary water touches him, he will drown in his sleep.'" The crowd shivered. Obina stood up angrily. "You lie. You bewitched my child with your nonsense dreams." But even as he spoke, the boy in Ogechi's arms stirred and began to giggle softly, a sound like water rippling over stones. A cool breeze swept across the square. Though the day was hot, the scent of rain filled the air. The elders exchanged uneasy glances. Pa Nduka cleared his throat. "Tell us what must be done, woman." Amakene sighed deeply, her shoulders trembling. "At the next full moon, take him to the river. If the water rejects him, he will remain yours forever. But if it accepts him, you must release him. He is caught between two worlds, and the river is growing restless." Ogechi began to weep quietly. She held her son closer, her tears falling onto his soft hair. "He is my child," she whispered. "I carried him. I will not lose him to water or spirit." Amakeen nodded slowly, then prayed that the water rejects him, for if it accepts him, there will be nothing any human hand can do. The villagers were silent. Even the birds seemed to pause. As the elders dismissed the gathering, Ogechi turned to the maid and whispered bitterly, "If anything happens to my son, may your spirit never find rest." But Amakeen only smiled faintly. "Madam, my spirit has not rested for many years." That night, as the moon rose higher and the crickets sang, Obina could not sleep. The image of his son glowing under candlelight, the maid's haunting words, and the memory of Kamsi's quiet birth, they all swirled in his mind like water circling a drain. And far away, beyond the hills, the river began to stir. waves forming, though no wind blew. The moonlight shimmered on its surface, and a faint voice whispered beneath the water, "Soon, he returns to us." The night of the full moon came too quickly. The village lay quiet, wrapped in uneasy silence. Even the crickets seemed to hold their breath. By the banks of Omo River, torches flickered, casting shaky light over the gathered villagers. The elders stood a few steps behind, their faces carved in worry. Ogechi clutched her baby tightly against her chest, her eyes swollen from days of crying. Emma Kane stood apart, her wrapper fluttering in the cold breeze. The moonlight made her look like she was carved out of water itself. Panduka raised his walking stick. "Let the child be brought forward," he said quietly. Ogechi hesitated, her arms tightening around Kamsi, but the baby wriggled gently, his eyes fixed on the river, as if something beyond the mist was calling to him. Obina touched his wife's shoulder. His voice broke. "We must know the truth, my love. If this is what will save him, we must let it be done." With trembling hands, Ogechi stepped closer to the riverbank. The moon's reflection shimmered on the surface like 1,000 silver coins. Emma Kane took a small calabash and dipped it into the river. She whispered a chant no one could understand, her voice rising and falling like waves. Then she turned to Ogechi. "If the water rejects him, it will turn cold and still. But if it accepts him," her eyes softened, "it will rise to claim him." Ogechi's heart hammered. Slowly she dipped her fingers into the calabash and let a few drops fall on her baby's feet. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the river stirred. Ripples spread across its surface. A sudden wind swept through, and a faint sound echoed, like the laughter of a child beneath the water. The villagers gasped. The baby's eyes glowed faintly, his small hands reaching toward the river as if greeting an old friend. Ogechi screamed, pulling him back, but the child did not cry. He only smiled, a calm, strange, peaceful smile. Then the water shimmered with light. Out of it rose a soft mist shaped like a woman, tall, graceful, and glowing blue. Her voice was gentle yet powerful. "Do not fear, mother. He was born of you, but his soul belongs to me. He will live, not beneath the waters, but between both worlds. Protect him with purity, for he carries the peace of the river." And just as suddenly the mist faded, the water calmed. The moonlight fell softly again. Emma Keen dropped to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "She has spared him," she whispered. "He is safe, but my duty is done." Before anyone could speak, she walked into the shallow water, slowly, quietly, and vanished like smoke dissolving into mist. They called her name. They searched with torches until dawn, but she was gone, leaving behind only her wrapper, folded neatly on the sand. Ogechi wept as she held her son, whispering through tears, "She saved him, and we never even said thank you." That night, the river flowed softer than ever, as if mourning and blessing at the same time. And from that day on, whenever it rained, the sound of the water carried a lullaby, the song of the maid who once guarded a child of two worlds. And that is how the river kept her promise. Some say that even today, if you stand by Omo River when the moon is full, you will hear the gentle hum of Emma Kane's song, watching over every child born with a quiet soul. So remember this, not all who walk among us are ordinary. Some are sent to protect, to guide, and then return to where they belong. If you enjoyed this story, kindly subscribe to the channel. That is your own way of supporting us. Subscription is free. Give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who loves African folktales.